Welcome into Carps Corner. Another big show. A lot going on in the NFL. Just when you think it's going to stop, it never does. There's so much always there to digest. My goodness. Trying to figure out, hey, when I'm recording this, when is information going to finally slow down? When is it going to stop? It has not stopped here all this week. There's been a lot of great stuff. Spring ball's in the books. Draft is coming up next week. So I think I'm going to probably try to put together some good draft stories and some things for early next week. Maybe try to get together former teammates, for a couple guys I play with. Maybe we can talk a little draft stories, have the first interview here in Carps Corner, because I think it would be appropriate, I guess, as you could say, around draft time to kind of get into some of those stories and tell some of the lighthearted stuff that hopefully you guys will enjoy and hopefully it'll be good. So can figure that out and try to see, what's going on, right there with all of that. Also big news here. So as we look at this, the NFL quarterback carousel still spinning, trying to figure out exactly where it's going to stop, how it's going to land, and how all that's going to ultimately shake out. There's some new offensive coordinators. People are talking, maybe stepping in it a little bit, how that ultimately looks. JJ Watt weighing in. His quarterback, Kyler Murray, isn't going to be at offseason workouts. Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been at offseason workouts. His is a little bit different. USFL, are you watching? And will there be a conflict with the XFL when that launches next year? Tell you what, the USFL caught a little bit of it, not a lot. They had their little drama-filled pizza event, which we'll get into, and talk about that as well. Denzel Ward gets his big deal. Tom Brady makes some comments about what he has left in the tank and ultimately where his career is going from here. Hugh Jackson, you'll wish he would just go away. If he was that good of a coach, and I was a defender of Hugh Jackson for a long time, but if he was that good of a coach, someone else would have hired him by now. The reality is he's still available. He's still on the open market, and he's still talking and making excuses about how he got wrong and where it all went awry in Cleveland. So enough of that nonsense. But I want to start with the wide receiver position group. Look at this. There's three big dudes who are out there who are really set and due for contracts in Terry McLaurin, the Washington Commanders, but I prefer Washington football team, honestly, almost fits better. You got Deebo Samuel out in San Fran, you got A.J. Brown in Tennessee. So here's where we're at now. Anytime someone wants to be traded or they don't really feel like they're being respected to a high enough level, what's the first move? They want a deal, the team's not talking to them. I mean, this is where we're at now. This is a product of being, a social media generation. Hey, it's like being Facebook official. You go in, you break up, you're officially dating. Teams and guys now go in. Kyler Murray did it. A.J. Brown went and did it, scrubbed his social media of Tennessee, not a part of it. And all these people are out there hammering on him. You don't love the team, call him a diva. I will say this about A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is one of the toughest receivers you're going to find in the NFL. Just because a guy wants to get some dollars and is due up for it, and it's probably a pretty firm negotiation, that doesn't make them a diva. There are guys out there that are divas, and I will tell you when I believe a guy is a diva and when I'm hearing that. A.J. Brown is not that diva. And so people get on social media and they want to just hammer and pound away. A.J. Brown's not that guy to go to. You don't need to say that to him. He cares about it. He's not trying to be a distraction. He just wants to get paid just like everybody else. And frankly, he's put a great body of work out there. Deebo Samuel wants to get paid, working through some contract stuff. San Francisco is kind of tight on the cap. So there's a lot of different levers being pulled here. Not to mention the fact he's a wide receiver who's playing running back too. He's really the main catalyst on their offense. George Kittle was hurt a lot last year. So it all fell on Deebo Samuel. So he wants to get paid to his market value for all of the value that he's ultimately providing. I get it. I understand it. Also, probably doesn't want to play running back very much. Why, you ask? Oh, it's great for fantasy. I think Deebo Samuel cares about fantasy. Deebo Samuel, he cares about production. He cares about winning. But He also cares about elongating his career. And if you look at the franchise tags, running back now is the second lowest to specialist as far as their franchise tag number, because these guys don't get paid anymore. You look conversely at wide receiver, they are the highest position player. Outside of quarterback, you're talking 20 million, receivers, you're talking 10. And so Deebo Samuel's probably sitting here looking at this saying, you want me to play running back and receiver. I'm a pretty darn good receiver and I'm helping us at running back. I want to get paid like a wideout. I want to play more wideout. It's going to elongate my career. Sure, I'll help at running back. I'll do what I need to do. But if you're going to force me to play running back and play some receiver, then I want to get paid for both. And that's why they're throwing out these numbers of like $27 million I was hearing. And it makes sense. If I'm Deebo Samuel, you may cut 3 or 4 years off my career. You see some of these receivers go and play well into their early 30s, mid 30s. They don't take the punishment that the running backs do. Running backs, 30, falling off a cliff. So if I'm Deebo Samuel, I'm pushing back because I don't want to play running back anymore. Pay me to be a wide receiver. I'll spot play at running back. I'm a team guy, but don't lump me in with the rest of the running backs when receivers get paid up here now and running backs get paid here. That paradigm has flipped over the last 10 years. It used to be never pay receivers. You can't win a Super Bowl with the highest paid receiver in the league. The leading NFL league leading receivers, they never made it far in the playoffs. Those things have changed. It was always the running backs, and you still need a running game. But it's the receivers now that are driving the bus. And then lastly, Terry McLaurin, who's going to OTAs and going to go to the offseason program, but not going to participate. It's smart. It's smart. I know people are going to be banging on the other guys. And believe me, would get frustrated, but listen, you watch guys go get hurt all the time in non-contact injuries, non-contract drills. David Ajabo of Michigan blows his Achilles on his pro day workout. Who's there to help him? These guys, yeah, they're under contract, but this is voluntary stuff. They want to get a deal done. And they're not just holding out necessarily for leverage. They're holding out for injury. And I'm a big proponent. You can get hurt doing anything. I'm going to lift. I'm going to run. But I don't need to be running around on the practice field. I want to make sure that I'm protecting myself until I'm ultimately financially taken care of, because I've gotten all the way to the goal line. Let's just get it across and get it in the end zone. And that's what's tough for people to realize. Like, it's no different than, let's say you get a winning lottery ticket. You're going to go skydiving the next day. You're going to go, I don't know, bungee jumping, pick your dangerous activity, try some new illicit drug for the first time. Like, no, if you've got a winning lottery ticket and it says you've got $50 million coming your way, you're going to have a good time. You're not going to do anything reckless with your life. You want to make sure you can cash in on that. These guys, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, have all hit that point. They're on the goal line of getting their new deal and getting a big deal. And all these guys, they weren't necessarily, top 5 picks, now these massive deals. And so this is a real chance for them to cash in. So they're not missing games. They're missing OTAs, voluntary stuff. Heck, they're not even fined because it's voluntary. And so you want them there with the team. And I get that. I understand that. But part of the reality is too, they have to protect themselves. And so that's it. And when you look at Tyreek Hill, the contract he got, Devontae Adams, the contract he got, Stephon Diggs, the contract he got, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, all want contracts in that vicinity, especially Deebo Samuel, because of what they ask him to do and of the wear and tear on his body and the toll that it ultimately takes. So I get it for these guys. I'm a big team guy, but I'm pro player in this situation because I know how close they are, and they're missing the offseason. These guys are all pros. They work hard. They show up in shape. They're not going to come out like Damon Wayans in the Great White Hype, 30 pounds overweight and looking fat. They'll be fine. They'll be ready to go. The question is, do any of them get traded? I don't think Terry McLaurin gets traded. I don't believe A.J. Brown gets traded. Deebo Samuel, you could see that. And why? When you look at what receivers are getting paid, and you're talking $20 million now, $20 million. Then take a look at the receiver depth in the draft. There'll probably be 5, 6 guys going first round. Got the Ohio State guys, Jameson Williams. got Trey Burke. I mean, Burks, you got some talented players. There'll probably be 5 or 6 dudes in the first round. Jahan Dotson, all these different dudes. And so they'll be salary controlled. So if you can trade a guy away and get a second round pick and get a receiver in the first round, and you don't have to pay that dude $20 million, a huge substantial part of your cap, it makes sense. Then you have coming out Cooper Kupp saying, hey, you know what? I don't need to break the bank. I'm good. Hey, and maybe he takes a below market deal for the Rams. We'll see how all that plays out, but that's going to be for another day. We'll start right next with Ben McAdoo. Ben McAdoo, the former coach for the Giants, did not do well there. I mean, he would go up to the podium, stick his foot in his mouth. He was contentious with reporters when he was the Giants coach. And frankly, I mean, he kind of looked, I didn't necessarily like his look. He had the goatee, the slick back hair. He now is Carolina's offensive coordinator. Comes to the podium and says, hey, I'm trying to get better with you guys. Comes there looking a lot more like the stinking Big Lebowski. Looking amazing. We throw that up there. You take a look at him. I mean, he looks pretty darn sweet. But then he comes out and says, they asked if Sam Darnold is your QB. Yes, he says. Well, and then a little bit later, walks it back, but also says Sam has a little magic in his game. The reality is Sam Darnold's their quarterback. Him and PJ Walker are the only two on roster right now. But could make a play for Baker. Probably wouldn't happen until after the first round, or they could ultimately draft a guy in the first round. The problem is Carolina didn't have any picks after that. But Ben McAdoo reemerging, and I like this new Ben McAdoo. We're going to throw that back up. Now, that dude looks sweet. He's entertaining. He looks like the Big Lebowski out there. That's a dude you'd want to play for. Gosh, all about the quarterbacks this week. We're going to weigh in now. Defensive end, J.J. Watt, James Conner, the running back in Arizona. They don't necessarily mind that Kyler Murray is missing because he's another guy. He's a quarterback now that's sitting out of OTAs. He wants a new deal, wants a big deal, and said he's not playing this year unless he gets an extension. Here's the one thing everybody needs to understand about NFL players. Guys will rarely ever comment on a teammate's contract situation. Why is that? Because that carousel goes in a circle. And one day you may be on the other side of that trying to get a contract. And people might be saying things about you in the media. The last thing you want is for your teammates speaking on you because you're trying to get it. So all guys understand this. And so JJ Watt comes out there and says, hey, all I need is for him to be here week 1 and play good. And that's the reality. That's how NFL guys feel. As long as you're getting your work done, at quarterback's a little different because it's a position where there's a lot of collaboration with the receivers and you really need that. But JJ Watt understands. James Conner understands. All NFL veteran players understand the fact that, there might be a day where the shoe is on the other foot. And the last thing you want to see is someone out there talking about your contract in your situation and saying you need to get out there. The only time that happens, it happened with Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh, when guys feel like you're just being ridiculous and you're trying to make a stink and you want out and the team is doing everything they can for you and they've always been good to you. Finally, when it reaches that level, that's ultimately when guys begin to turn on maybe their teammates, but you don't really see it happen all that often. And that's why JJ Watt's coming out saying, hey, I'm supporting my dude. Go get paid. Because there were times when JJ Watt was getting support from his players, his teammates. Everybody needs that. Everybody does. Some news out of Cleveland. First of all, the good news. Cleveland Browns, they inked up Denzel Ward, 5-year, $100 million deal. Cleveland kid getting paid by Cleveland, going to Ohio State. He's played his whole career in the Buckeye State. He's checking boxes. He's made a couple of Pro Bowls. When healthy, Denzel Ward is one of the best corners you're going to find in the NFL. And he's going to be a keystone now moving forward. So that happened obviously a couple of days ago. And that's really great for Cleveland. I love to see him now. They've got Chubb locked up. They got Watson locked up. They got some offensive linemen locked up. Myles Garrett locked up. Amari Cooper's on a great next year pay as you go for 3 seasons. So they've got him in a pretty good spot. Should he fall off, they can get out, but they've got him under contract. And so they've got a lot of their key pieces set up in a big way. And that's very, very positive for the Browns. Working really well for them. Here's the negative. They got people coming in now from the NFL, independent investigation, trying to evaluate, is did tanking occur? Did Hugh Jackson, was he involved in it? And so we'll throw this up here because Hugh Jackson, he just won't go away. He said 2 years ago, I tried to do this the right way through the bylaws and constitution of the National Football League to ask them to investigate the Cleveland Browns for the allegations that I've made. So why is the investigation happening now? Here's the problem, Hugh. This is why the investigation's happening now. Because there was probably maybe legitimate allegations in Miami. I'm not sure. But now you have multiple situations where this has possibly occurred. And so the NFL has to look into it. Hugh, it may have looked like you were tanking, and I defended Hugh Jackson for a long time. But man, if you were that good of a coach, there would be other NFL teams that would be lining up to hire you. I thought you got done wrong by the Raiders. And obviously you didn't have a great situation with the Browns, but I watched how you handled the Baker Mayfield situation. I watched some of your in-game decision-making. Not great. And don't tell me it's because you're trying to tank. Don't tell me that. Because I watched those decisions. I'm thinking, who the heck would make those as a head coach? So the Cleveland Browns, they're going to get absolved of this. And I just wish, probably like so many other Cleveland fans, that Hugh Jackson would just kind of ride off into the sunset and fade away. That would be the ideal situation. Instead of him continually opening up and chirping about how he was done wrong and he was the canary in the coal mine and he tried to ultimately make it right. Come on, Hugh. Does anybody believe in that? Does anybody believe in that? Because I'm not. And I don't think the NFL is, and I don't think they're ultimately going to find anything anyway. So that's that. That's with Hugh. Tom Brady came back to Tampa Bay. There's a lot of smoke around Miami. Sean Payton admitted that there was talking between intermediaries about him potentially going to coach Miami and probably in a package deal with Tom Brady and giving him equity. We've outlined all that and everything that has happened there. But this was really revealing. I haven't played with Tom, briefly. He never talked about the end. He's always been wired to be on to the next. That's just how he's built. And so listen to him last season, be more introspective on everything, talk about his family, outside interests, other important things. It's like, all right, I kind of get it now. I'm understanding this a little bit better. It seems like you're probably ready to retire, but he still felt like he had a little bit in the tank. And this is the thing with competitive guys. They want to run it dry. Tom wants to go out there until he feels like he can't play at a high level anymore. And I get that. Because once you're done, like your superhero status exists. You're just part of general population and your skills slowly erode and deteriorate. And you become just like everyone else. I'm fighting it every day. Every former player fights it. Of all sports, you've got superhuman ability because you get to do stuff and play in a sport that not many people can do. And so that, by kind of definition, makes you a little superhuman. We'll throw this quote up and take a look at this. It says, I know I don't have a lot left. I really do. I know I'm at the end of my career. I wish you could go forever, but it's just not football. And football comes at too high a cost now. My kids are getting older and it's just getting harder and harder to miss these things. I wanted to give myself and my teammates and our organization another incredible opportunity to accomplish something that we'd all be very proud of. I think Tom wanted to go into the season knowing that it was going to be his final season, understanding that this would be, quote, his last dance, and really probably trying to embrace and enjoy it. Not saying that he's not going to grind, not saying that he's not going to go out there and work, because frankly, I don't think Tom Brady knows how to do it any other way. But wanted to come back because you still felt the way the season ended, losing the Rams, you have the big second half comeback. If I'm Tom, it's going to eat at me, knowing that I could go out there and still do this and compete at a high level and just having a little bit left, saying, what if? The saddest words in the English language are ultimately what if. And so Tom, he wants to come back, wants to get it done, wants to check it out one more time and see if he can make a run. And frankly, Tampa Bay was able to get most of his squad back together. He's going to have, Todd Bowles at the helm. They'll have a shot to ultimately go get it and see what they can do. Moving on to some USFL news. I don't know how many people watched it that were sitting here talking right now. So almost 3 million watched the Saturday game, 2.3 watched the Sunday game. I think here's the thing with the USFL. I love it because it's giving guys opportunities. If you can bet on it, people will watch it. And so I'm on board with that. And I'm probably gonna start tuning in and I'm gonna start checking it out. Um, and then you got the situation about if you're unfamiliar, the guy, you know, all they had was chicken salad for lunch, said he wanted pizza. Uh, Cook said, he couldn't have that. Gets, not pretty respectful about it. Goes in, talks to GM about it. Your head coach, is this going to be a problem? Yeah, no, yes, okay. They end up cutting. They film it all. And people are sitting there like, if the league can't afford to get guys pizza versus chicken salad, then they shouldn't be in business anyway. Here's the deal. Playing the USFL, you're making a $40,000 base salary. Everyone is. You've got bonuses for winning games, bonuses for winning the playoffs, bonuses for winning the championship. I think top end, if you were undefeated and played it all out, Brock Hewitt, who was calling the game on Saturday night, said, hey, you could make $80,000, for 3 months of work. Not a bad gig. But here's the reality. If you don't want it, that lunch, bring your own. I mean, the USFL, if you think this is the NFL, that's the problem. Guys get confused with what it is. This is minor leagues, basically. You don't see AA and single A baseball players complaining about their food. They can. But if it's going to be that big of a deal, we'll find somebody else. We don't want to deal with this. And so I understand where guys, hey, I don't want to eat that. I don't like it. There's a lot of things that I don't like to eat. But if they say that's all that we have, okay, well, can't have that. No, that's for someone else. Maybe it's for the coaches, other players. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But if you don't like it, go buy your own stuff. The reality is they're giving you a chance to go out there and play. So if you don't like chicken salad, bring your own food and don't be making, even if it's a little stink, a little fuss, it's too much. The USFL playing this year, what's interesting, they have their guys locked up on 2-year deals. The XFL coming in next year, going to be going on at the same time. So we're going to watch that battle, USFL and Rock, and see how that ultimately shakes out. Lastly, I want to finish with this. Don't usually talk a lot of sports outside of football, a lot of college, a lot of NFL stuff. Maybe we get into a little NBA, college hoops at times. But Wimbledon came out and they're banning Russian tennis players from Wimbledon. And I sat here and thought about that. I'm like, okay, I understand we want to ratchet up pressure, economic sanctions on Vladimir Putin to make it as difficult for him as possible to operate. The oligarchs that surround him, you freeze their assets. Those guys are supporting him and helping him stay in power. I get going at them, but why go at the athletes? Most of these people, when you've seen them, the athletes that are Olympic sports who go out and play internationally, they're all anti-Russian war. They don't want to see it happen. They have zero ability to put pressure on Vladimir Putin. They're not ultra wealthy. They don't own oil companies and they're not controlling the Russian trade. They're just out there trying to play. And so I don't understand that. I don't understand. I understand the wealthy businessmen that surround him that have empowered Vladimir Putin, but I don't understand the athletes who simply want to go out and compete. And a lot of them have made statements against the Russian government and against Vladimir Putin. And there have been anti-war sentiment about it. And so with that, like, you're going to penalize them? I mean, heck, they're risking their lives to say negative things. They may go back and disappear. That's what happens. That's what happens. So I think you may have stepped over it a little bit. I understand the anti-Russian sentiment. I get it. It makes sense. Do everything, every economic lever you have and everything you can do to support Ukraine. I get all those things. But like individual athletes, NHL, I mean, they're not suspending any Russian players. There's a large percentage of foreign-born players are Russian in the NHL, and they're still out there performing because you know what? Most of those guys, they don't want to see the war either. They don't want it. And so, they make these comments, and thankfully they're in America. They probably have family over there, and they risk their lives saying some of these things. No different than some of the stuff Enes Kanter said, the NBA player. When you make statements against an authoritarian government where you're from, I mean, you're risking your life and your family's lives. So understand that. I don't think the tennis players are going to sway this either way for Vladimir Putin. And I don't think that them not playing, I mean, it's not having an impact on the Russian economy. And so you're just robbing people of opportunities. And I don't necessarily like that. But that concludes this edition of Carps Corner. Thanks for tuning in. Leave messages, questions, anything you want to see me talking about, please ask away. Continue to talk football, some Buckeye football, NFL draft. I'm going to have some guests on, stories. We'll get all that stuff scheduled up and get it taken care of. But like it, recommend it, subscribe, do everything you can. I appreciate the support, and we'll talk to you soon.